So today is the 15th Sunday after Pentecost. There's a lot of announcements today. I think it'll take me too long to read them all, so please get a copy of the bulletin. Old Society Cleaning Team is St. Rita's, October 1st. September 26th, school pictures are taken. No time is given as to when, so I guess you'll have to call the office. All right, we'll be making salsa this Friday, September 30th. This Friday. Okay. Again, you have to see the bulletin. You are invited to a rosary and prayer protest. This is a peaceful protest, the announcement says. Okay, well. Wednesday, September 28th, from 10 to 11 a.m. at the public sidewalks on both sides of the street by Planned Parenthood. All right. Okay, after both masses today, we're serving burritos, breakfast burritos. And this is to help out our high school students raise money for their hoped-for trip to Washington, D.C. Okay, we're looking for volunteers for sanding and refinishing the pews and the communion rail for the future chapels for the sisters. So if you can help, there's a number in the bulletin to call. Okay, for students not attending the academy, catechism classes are on Wednesday afternoons from 3:30 to 4:15. Then there's a jogathon update in the bulletin. This fundraiser gives us a good opportunity to get money from other people other than parishioners. Okay, it's October 21st. Okay, there's a day of recollection for the high school students and young adults, September 29th. All are welcome. And the schedule is published in the bulletin. Then we're having another Rosary March, or whatever. First Saturday, October 1st, following 8 o'clock Mass. And again, all the details are in there, so get the bulletin. It's too much to read. All right, the epistle for the 15th Sunday after Pentecost is that taken from the letter to the Galatians, chapter 5, verses 25 to 26, and chapter 6, verses 1 through 10. Brethren, if we live by the Spirit let us also walk. Let us not become desirous of vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another. Brethren, even if a person is caught doing something wrong, you who are spiritual, instruct such a one in a spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so you will fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks himself to be something, whereas he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let everyone test his own work, and so he will have glory in himself only, and not in comparison with another. For each one will bear his own burden. And let him who is instructed in the word search all good things with his teacher. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For what a man sows, that he will also reap. For he who sows in the flesh, from the flesh also will reap corruption. But he who sows in the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap life everlasting. And in doing good, let us not grow tired. For in due time we shall reap if we do not relax. Therefore, while we have time, let us do good to all men, but especially to those who are of the household of faith. And the Holy Gospel to be read for today's Mass is that taken from the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 7, verses 11 through 16. At that time, Jesus went to a town called Naim, and his disciples and a large crowd went with him. And as he drew near the gate of the town, behold, a dead man was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she a widow. And a large gathering from the town was with her. And the Lord, seeing her, had compassion on her and said to her, Do not weep. And he went up and touched the stretcher, and the bearers stood still. And he said, Young man, I say to thee, arise. And he who was dead sat up and began to speak. And he gave him to his mother. But fear seized upon all, and they began to glorify God, saying, A great prophet has risen amongst us, and God has visited his people. And thus far the words of today's Holy Gospel. There's nothing so permanent as death. Nothing possesses such finality, and therefore the pain of separation between loved ones is the greatest of all pains. They penetrate right to our very heart. And the greatest of these is the loss of a child. Ask any parent who has. Death removes all hope of seeing each other again. Even our Lord wept when he heard the news of Lazarus' death. He too was overcome by the pain of separation, just as we are. So our Lord was no stranger to what we experience when death enters our life. No one can say that he was aloof from this pain common to all eventually. This is one of the things that is so interesting about our Lord. He did not exempt himself from the miseries of our fallen human nature, although he could have done so quite easily and justifiably. God, though he was, he knew from experience what it was like to be human. There is probably no other religion in the world of which this can be said. For all the false gods held themselves aloof from human suffering and faults. Well, except perhaps for some of the Greek gods, they did admit to faults. But in fact, there are people who have rejected Christianity as a religion precisely because our Lord died on a cross, and thus these people cannot accept a religion where the founder was apparently defeated. What kind of a God is this, they ask. Now, when our Lord met the widow whose son had died, he knew very well what death was. The strong bond that it had so ruthlessly severs, and the pain of a mother's heart. So he had every reason to take pity on this poor woman. Death in this instance was particularly poignant for two reasons. Number one, the woman had no husband to console her and to fall back upon for strength. And number two, the man who died was the only son of this mother. This would make her sorrow particularly heartrending, as she had no other sons to console her either. At the same time, this situation gave him the opportunity to do three things. One, to restore life to the son. Number two, to bring joy to the heart of the mother. And three, to prove his divinity through a miracle. Our Lord always knew how to get the most mileage out of every situation. The church recalls this incident to us because it directly deals with the reason for our Lord's coming, and that is, of course, to save men from death. The death our Lord was concerned about was the death brought about through sin, not mere physical death, which he simply called sleeping. Death, as we understand it, is merely a crossing over from one state to another. If we cross over into heaven, then it is a good thing, and there is nothing to worry about. But sin makes this crossing over a thing of doubt. It's doubtful whether we will cross over to heaven. And so this crossing over is a thing to be feared, because this is a death that permanently affects our soul for all eternity.